guys start filling out your forms? Okay.
Then just say your student.
So you guys now should have filled out 3 different forms: the fellowship agreement, the emergency contact form, and the travel waiver. So you guys did that, and you're all good. Make sure to turn those in before you leave. Okay. So next is like a little bit more like practical, fun, not really fun, but like tips about how to survive, in your new location, how to really succeed at your office. So we're just gonna have a little bit of a panel or Q&A with some past fellows. Myself, Otis. Otis, where did you work?
I was in Ghana at the Center for Democratic Development.
And Krista? Krista, where did you work?
I worked at Institute for National Policy Research in Taiwan.
And Sydney, where did you work?
I worked at the Planning and Conservation League in Sacramento.
And I also was a fellow in Sacramento with Senator Joe Smedian, who's also just passing this year, but he's still in office. So do you guys have any questions? We can just talk a little bit generally about tips, but I'm sure I start off by asking anything that might be on your mind. Anything? Okay, well.
How much did you meet with alumni over the course of the summer? How did you go about reaching out to them?
You couldn't have asked a better question. Okay, so we're going to be sending out an email just sometime this quarter, which is going to address again. There's going to be 2 options for meeting with alums. One, there's going to be like a link to the alumni directory, so you can just go ahead and find out if there are alums in your region that you can meet with and seek them out on your own. Or the ready-made option is that you can fill out this little form about what your interests are, and HOS staff, namely Megan, will go ahead and match you with an alum in your region that's has similar interests to you. And I can't stress enough how wonderful meeting with alums is, particularly in Sacramento, but really anywhere. There's Stanford alums everywhere and anywhere, even if you don't think there are. Often they'll take you to lunch for free sometimes. Well, usually if they're older alums, not just graduated. But they'll just generally share their wisdom, and it's wonderful. So I think that's something that, for your learning plan, that would be a great goal. Meet with 5 alums or meet with 3 alums. I think I met with about 4 or 5 during my summer, and that was only in the second half of the summer because it took me a little while to get going. It's something I wish I had started from day one because they're just really awesome.
Yeah, and if you guys are in Sacramento, they're already planning a reception for you guys, so you'll be able to meet them.
If you're international, it's a little bit more challenging, but you'd be surprised. Look for there's different lists people on. There's a Africa list that for people who are there over the summer, and so this isn't alums per se, but there's people grad students, other people doing different programs in your area, and people just stay on this list for a really long time. So a recent grad did reach out to me once over this list. So there's ways to meet people for sure.
You also might not be able to find alumni in the area that you're working in. For me, I wasn't matched with anyone in Taiwan because there wasn't really anyone available at that time. But if you're planning to stay at another country for the rest of your summer break, for example, I went back to Korea and I met an alumni in Korea. So that's also a possibility. So you don't have to always think about meeting an alumni in the region that you're working in, because sometimes that's also pretty hard. So.
Is there a question back there?
No, I was going to ask what the International Fellows version of that, but you answered as I was raising my hand.
Psychic.
Yeah.
Other questions?
Are the dates relatively flexible in terms of start and finish?
Good question. Okay, so the fellowships are 9 weeks long, working full time. Those are the only parameters that we set. The specific start and end dates are completely up to you. You should, if you have not contacted your office already, you really should do that ASAP. Usually they're pretty flexible. I haven't heard much about pushback as far as oh, those dates don't work for us. There might be some more strategic times to work, particularly if you're in Sacramento, so you can try to avoid as much as a legislative break as possible. but just talk to them. And, you know, if you haven't already, also try and give them a phone call to introduce yourself. And you can just use that as a jumping off. You can use the start and end dates as a jumping off point, sure. But you can also just get a general sense of the types of projects they have in mind for you. And anything that can anything that can help you direct your preparation. And plus, it's just nice for them to finally hear, you know, your voice. Because we've been talking to your offices for like a long time now about you. So you should really try and introduce yourself.
About that, can I add a little? Yeah. You have to be really strategic when you select the dates because organizations hold different events at different time periods, and depending on the time frame that you set, you get to participate or miss the events. And so you should at least ask them about the main list of events that they're planning to hold during the summer, so that you know which ones are of your interest, so that you can select the dates. For example, I participated in a large multinational democracy forum, but I missed the security forum that was after my internship period. So you should always make sure to contact them before you select the dates, and you know what's happening in that time period.
As part of that, is SIG flexible as to when mid-summer reports and end of summer reports are due? Because I'm not actually starting until mid-July, so I wouldn't be able to turn in the mid-summer report then.
Well, I'll be emailing about that. You and I can email about that.
But one note is that at least historically, I don't know if it's still true, sometimes you, especially with stewardship letters towards the end, you may still have a week left or 2 weeks left when you're writing this, and that's okay. I started late in mine, I didn't start till July 1st, which isn't quite as late, but so I still have a couple weeks left when I wrote my stewardship letter, but yeah, I still have plenty of things to talk about.
If anybody has anything like that, just let me know. That's going to be a little bit later, and we'll probably just touch base a little bit more about that. Because part of it is that when we send one of these letters out to the donor, we want them all to get them around the same time period. Just like you all talk to each other, some of them talk to each other. So we don't want Joe to get a letter and Jim not to see his yet. So that's coordination on our part.
I know we're working full time, but are we required to clock in hours or anything like that? Nothing like that?
I don't know any office that makes you do that. Usually they're pretty chill, particularly on the legislative placements, but it's going to be up to the office vibe. You know, if people in your office are working 8, 9-hour days, then that's what's going to be the norm for you. In some offices, it's going to be more 7 to 8-hour days. So really just go by what the standard is for their full-time staff.
Yeah, you don't have to report to us.
Yeah, that's fine.
This might be fellowship specific, but do the offices give us a lot of direction, or do we kind of go in and tell them what it is we want to do?
I guess we can kind of talk about what our personal experiences are, but in my experience, it was very much, so I had a legislative placement, I worked for a senator. So the first week I was following the senator around, I was following different staff members to really cool meetings. And then after that, it was really up to me, after I'd kind of gotten that baseline, it was up to me to kind of drive a project. So I sought out the staff member in the office that was working on what I was interested in, so education. And then I got to follow that dude around, and he made little projects for me, and I got to go to a little conference with him. So it's going to depend. Some offices are going to have a very distinct project that you're assigned to. But in cases where that's not the case, you really have to just take initiative, as with any internship. Make sure that you're not, that you're really driving your experience.
Yeah, I mean, this is sort of where the learning plan comes in. So I didn't do a learning plan, but I think it would have been really valuable in terms of it helps you drive that experience. So in Ghana, there were a variety of projects that were sort of ongoing, but there'd be slack periods and then intense periods and slack periods. So to fill up that time, it was that was where I was driving it, and knowing that I was interested in more the economic side of things allowed me to get to know the people in the office who are working on that and work more on that. But you definitely, it really depends on the placement, I think.
Yeah, and I was also in Sacramento at the San Luis at the Planning and Conservation Week, and depending on the organization, sometimes you do have to come in with the project in mind, especially if the legislature is on recess. There may not be as much going on, so that's when you can bring your ideas to the table, what you have skills in, what you're interested in, and then they'll match you accordingly. So that's definitely something to keep in mind, especially if you're heading to Sacramento. You may be there when recess is going on?
So similarly, in my office, other than the times when we had to prepare for conferences, I was basically left alone to decide whatever I wanted to do. So I tried to utilize that time period to do my own research, and I tried to contact people at the office. There are a lot of professors, so I contacted them about resources, and I wrote papers and talked to them about my paper. So it all depends on how much you talk to the people at the office and ask for help, because if you don't, then basically they will not really require you to do anything. So it all depends on your initiative, that you can learn more and use the opportunity to get a valuable experience.
Is SIG's 9-week period for the fellowships, is that pretty strict? Because so I talked to the office and they actually said that the former fellows were staying for around 6 weeks each. And I was like, that doesn't sound right.
Yeah, I think that's right. So 9 weeks is very strict.
Well, I'm more asking us make the office let me stay for 9 weeks because
What office is it?
Global Center for Democracy and Development in Peru.
Alright, so we talk to us afterwards, because that's not true.
Kind of the opposite of that. My office was telling 10 weeks. So do I tell them? No?
I mean, you only have to work 9 weeks. If you want to stay longer, awesome. You'll probably get an even richer experience, but we can't make your stipend greater. So.
Two questions. One, how do you recommend getting to know a city well, or shorten the amount of time it takes to get to know it? And two, how much were you able to, get to know similar organizations to the ones you were working with in your city? Were you able to attend conferences, or just have coffee with somebody, or just learn about what other people were doing in the city?
So basically, about your first question, it's really important to talk to people at the office and join them in whatever social event that they're having. Sometimes you might feel a bit shy and you don't want to, necessarily have dinner with them all the time. But it is important that you go to whatever event that they're having and tell them that you want to join them, and they will of course take you. And then as you have dinners with them, you'll get to know them better, and they will actually tell you things like, oh, you should visit this place, and they'll actually help you to visit those places. For me, they told me, oh, this is a good tourist spot that you should visit, so they arranged the trip for me during the weekend, so I could actually go and visit the different parts of the city. So that's very important. About your second point, there are, for some fellowships, there are multiple internship placements in the same country. For example, Taiwan, there's 2. And for me, I contacted with the fellow that was working on the other organization in the city, so that I could visit her office and talk to her about things what the differences are between the organizations. So make sure that you talk to us if you want to know if there are any other placements in your country or your city, so that we can help you find other fellows working in the area. And also just by talking to people at the office, they might also be able to direct you to different institutions so that you can go and ask for information.
Yeah, I think especially if it's sort of an international placement or someplace where things are a little more different, definitely, yeah, I reiterate, when you meeting people, whether it's people you're living with, I lived in a big compound and there were lots of expats, and so I'd just they would be hey, I just want to go do something, and I'd be well, I'm not really into salsa dancing, but I wouldn't know where that is otherwise, and it gave me a sense of the city, and don't even imagine me trying to do salsa, and so that's, I think, really valuable, for sure.
Yeah. And ask the past fellow. They may know the cool hangouts that you can just go to and meet people safely.
Young alumni too. They
That's very
love
true.
to show you around and take you out, so definitely consider contacting them.
And Google Maps, actually. So, in Accra, there's no street signs, and if you use street names, people won't know what you're talking about, even if you're staying on that street. But Google Maps actually does have amazingly has all the street names and like it's actually accurate. So that can actually be a surprisingly good way to like kind of get a sense for the city like a little bit or your neighborhood.
For our obligations next year during the school year, if we're gonna be gone studying abroad or something, that could be an issue.
So if you're going to be abroad in the fall, that's when the like posters session, orientation, open house is going to be. So what you would do for that is email the committee member that's going to be in charge of your fellowship next year. They'll contact you with photos, pretty much everything that would go on the poster, and we will take up the responsibility of making that poster for you. If you're going to be gone in the winter, which is when like the application ratings or the interviews occur, depending on the situation, we may ask you to Skype in to help interview, or we may ask you to help review applications like online. It'll depend though, based on like our needs and the amount of applications we receive. But it's not going to be a problem. We'll make sure that you're able to participate in any way necessary.